I've made it no secret that I'm a big fan of the prequel trilogy. That's my favourite era of Star Wars storytelling. And while Lucasfilm's put a big emphasis on the Mandalorian timeline, the New Republic, they really are doubling down on prequel content, which I'm all here for, by the way. I'm not saying everything done by Disney in this era has been perfect, far from, but when you look at the upcoming provisional slate for 2024, and I do use the word provisional because nothing is ever set in stone when it comes to Lucasfilm, we're seeing an increase in prequel era content, which is something Kathleen Kennedy recently said, and it's not just the prequels, it's the pre-prequels as well, the High Republic with the Acolyte, going way back before then to the first ever Force users in James Mangold's 2027 film. And if we're talking about prequels strictly in the sense of before the original trilogy, not just in the Clone Wars era, then of course we have another season of The Bad Batch. The Bad Batch season 3 is going to be the final season, and we all know it's going to be pain. There is going to be a lot of heartbreak, I can tell you that. We're also getting, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, another season of Tales of the Jedi. They should explore some more prequel trilogy stories. I would love to see some Ayla Secura and Quinlan Vos. There is so much substance from the now decanonized Dark Horse comics, exploring some of her past. Also, as they did with Count Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn, it'd be awesome to see some of Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice type stuff, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, before episode 1. But also the second season of Tony Gilroy's Andor. Despite the WJ strikes, it's ploughing ahead, and so we are in for a year that is full of pre-original trilogy stories. And it's a weird one with the High Republic, because some articles have been saying the era is not doing well in terms of publishing, even though it does have its fans, they're not reaching the numbers and the outreach they hoped. It is still a fascinating period of time, and I don't want to judge it too soon. I did read some of the comics, and I have read one of the books, so when it comes to putting this era on screen in the visual aspect, I really hope they're able to sell us on it, because it does seem with Leslie Headland's The Acolyte, she wants to connect some aspects of the prequels. If you remember all the way back in 2022, earlier last year, she did mention how she used the Phantom Menace as inspiration, so I predict that just like in Star Wars Eclipse, which takes place in a similar time period, we're gonna see some of the Trade Federation, Neimoidian politics. Of course, fans want to see the Sith lineage that leads to Palpatine, in the sense of an appearance of his master Darth Plagueis. So I think Lucasfilm know that when it comes to showing the High Republic on screen, they've got to use more familiar content to kind of ease more casual audiences into it, because the High Republic is full of new characters, new concepts, explored elements of the Force we've not seen too much of in other time periods, notably in visual content. So they know with shows like The Acolyte it's got to be palatable. And speaking more broadly about prequels, the High Republic is long before the Phantom Menace. If Kathleen Kennedy is saying she wants to explore this era more, I'd love to see them do spin-offs of the current shows. If you think back to 2021, there was a rumor that we were going to get a Darth Maul show that was going to be yet another spin-off of the Clone Wars. I believe the outstanding animation style of The Bad Batch, which was built off of the Clone Wars but has improved so much, could be the perfect medium to tell these stories. So Lucasfilm is definitely doubling down, and that could be a good thing. As I mentioned at the start, it's not just the prequel trilogy though, as when it comes to Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, they're focusing on the Mandalorian universe, the Book of Boba Fett, Mando, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew. There's going to be a Dave Filoni movie, but when it comes to other projects that Kathleen Kennedy's been talking about, it's either before the original trilogy or far into the future, and with the Rey film they're going to do post Rise of Skywalker, but it seems like Kathy wants to focus specifically on the broad timeline of events from the start of the Jedi all the way up to the original trilogy, and that could mean so many things. There is so much potential there, so I'm curious to see after this slate of shows that's already been announced after these films, the kind of projects they're going to do, because with The Bad Batch, even though season 3 is going to be the final one, there is no doubt going to be something after it, and maybe some of the characters that survive, maybe an Omega show. Bear in mind, Dave Filoni never stops. I know the show is now Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rau, but he still oversees some of those big decisions. And when it comes to The Bad Batch, that was born out of the Clone Wars, and then we had Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars Resistance, so I'm excited to see the lineage of where The Bad Batch leads. Is there a cutoff point where we say we don't need more clone stories? Is The Bad Batch where it ends? And even if Omega's story continues somewhere else, could The Bad Batch be the final place that they do explore the clones? Maybe an Ahsoka with Captain Rex and Wolf, but is The Bad Batch going to be the final show that depicts the clones as we know them, post-war, still struggling with the effects of the new empire, living a life on the run? Because Brad Rau did promise one thing, The Bad Batch's final season is going to answer the question of where were they during the original trilogy, so there is something of a plan there. But going back to the days of the Republic, the Jedi, a big question Kathleen Kennedy asks is what happened with the Jedi over time? How did the Jedi evolve? So she wants to go back and ask those questions questions, and as I say, a show like The Acolyte, which doesn't go all the way back to what James Mangold's gonna do, is gonna answer some burning questions. I think when we talk about the future of Star Wars storytelling, there are so many question marks and unknowns. I see a lot of fans very apathetic towards upcoming Star Wars content, either because they didn't like previous shows, or they just don't trust the management at Lucasfilm, so we don't know what they're gonna do next. There are definitely a lot of lessons to be learned from the first slate of Star Wars content on Disney+. There were some hits, some misses, and the same can be said with the films, but will they learn those lessons? Are they gonna listen to what fans want? Because I do think when we talk about the prequels, whether it's the Clone Wars and episodes 1 to 3, that time period, or all the way back to the High Republic, the Old Republic from Star Wars Legends, the video games, the books, the comics, those are periods of the timeline fans have been really passionate about since the 90s, even before the prequel trilogy came out. It's more the blank canvas effect, anticipating some novelty but also building upon the familiar, and in theory it sounds great. Everything Kathleen Kennedy has said about this does sound like it's going to be a fan dream, but is it going to be? Are they going to execute it right? Fingers crossed, I hope they do, but it's more of a cautious optimism. When she says we want to focus on the past, and with James Mangold's film, I think that could do well because in a way, it's not touching any Skywalkers, it's not touching the time periods we know and love. And it's the same criticism I've seen for Rian Johnson's film The Last Jedi. Some fans say it's a good movie if you separate it from the Skywalker saga. So it could be a situation where if they don't touch characters and things we love, then we're more likely to enjoy it and take it at face value, not putting it up against things we really care about that could be destroyed, be it characters, stories, time periods. But it's also a question of who's being put in charge of certain projects, because with the Bad Batch, if you have someone like Jennifer Corbett, Dave Filoni for season 1, these people have a fundamental understanding of the characters they're working with, and the time period they're working with as well. At no point during the first 2 seasons of The Bad Batch did I think there was incompetency on the part of the creators, even if some episodes were a bit more boring than others. The familiar characters like Ryo Chuchi, Bail Organa, Captain Rex, I think were handled brilliantly, so if they do decide to bring in Boba Fett into season 3, I have no question it's going to be awesome. The same could be said post episode 9, what they're focusing on in the Charmin Obe-Chanoy movie. We're done with the original trilogy characters, we're done with Palpatine, the Empire is gone, the First Order, the Final Order, so what Rey does from there on out could be very interesting, and doesn't step on toes of things we love. And I've noticed with projects like Rogue One and Andor, when you put the right people in charge, when you put the right screenwriters and directors in the right positions, give them a section of the Star Wars universe, even if it's got overlap with some other projects, of course Rogue One did with A New Hope, they're much better focusing on their own original characters, Cassian Andor, Grogu, Din Djarin. The Acolyte is going to have so many new characters, new Jedi, even those that come from the publishing side like Vanestra Rowe, those are still original Disney characters, so we don't start from a place of expectation and legacy. These are characters that begin in these shows and we grow with them, we take them at face value, and it's the onus of the writers and the creators of the shows to give us a reason to care, because with someone like Luke, such a legacy character, or even Obi-Wan and Boba Fett, to many fans they didn't hit the mark. To a lot of fans, those creatives didn't understand the task. They didn't understand the character. That's not going to be objective though, that is going to be a subjective opinion. Just like anything in art, we all have our different interpretations, which is why some fans love Luke in The Last Jedi and others really don't. But share your thoughts on this and everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.